It was supposed to be just another stop on the way home. A quiet roadside diner, wooden booths, smell of coffee. The kind of place where no one pays attention unless you're loud. But for Marcus, something felt off the moment they walked in. He glanced around while holding his son's hand. A corner booth opened up and they slid in. His 8-year-old, Jordan, kept staring across the room. Not at the menu, not at the food, at a waitress. She was wearing a green apron, holding a coffee pot, talking to a trucker at the counter. Then Jordan leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, that waitress looks just like Mom." Marcus froze. His heart skipped. He didn't turn right away. His eyes just locked on the salt shaker in front of him. "She's gone. She died. We buried her." Jordan kept staring. "I mean it, Dad. She even has the same hair. The braid." "Look." Marcus turned slowly. The woman was walking down the aisle now, coming straight past their table. He didn't blink, couldn't. Same walk, same height, same gentle tilt of the head when she listened. His breathing grew shallow. His fingers curled tight around the edge of the table. And when she passed close enough for him to catch her scent, he almost dropped his glass. Lavender, his wife's perfume, not something like it, the exact one. His stomach flipped. The air in the room got heavy. Jordan whispered again, "Is it her?" Marcus couldn't answer. The waitress didn't even glance their way. She just kept moving, dropped off a check, then disappeared behind the kitchen doors. He looked around the diner. No one else seemed to notice. The world kept spinning. Orders kept coming. Forks clinked against plates. But inside that booth, time had stopped. Marcus wiped his hands on his jeans. They were sweating. He looked down at Jordan, who was now kneeling on the seat, eyes locked on the kitchen door. "I saw her smile," Jordan whispered. "She has the same dimple." Marcus clenched his jaw, his mind racing. "No, this is impossible. I stood over her casket. I carried it. But everything about her felt real. Too real." The kitchen door swung open again. The waitress came out, balancing a tray. Marcus stared. There, on her wrist, a small birthmark, crescent-shaped, just like Nia's. He swallowed hard. His eyes welled up. She turned again, heading to a table near the window. And then, for a brief second, she looked right at him. No expression, no reaction, just a glance. But it was her. It had to be. He grabbed Jordan's hand tighter. The noise in the diner faded. His heartbeat thudded louder than anything. That couldn't be a look-alike. That couldn't be coincidence. Everything inside him screamed, "Get up, ask her, say something." But he sat frozen. Like if he moved, the illusion would shatter. Jordan leaned in again. What if she didn't die? Marcus stared at the woman, then at the exit. His world had just been turned upside down, and he hadn't said a word yet. The rain had poured the day they buried her. Not the kind of soft drizzle people cry under in movies. It was heavy, cold, and cruel. Just like the moment itself. Marcus stood at the gravesite in a soaked black suit, holding his son's small hand. Jordan didn't cry loudly. He just stood there, silent, staring at the polished wooden casket like it didn't belong to them. People had shown up, neighbors, coworkers, church friends. But it all felt like a blur. Hugs, handshakes, murmurs of, "She was amazing," and "So sorry for your loss." None of it mattered. None of it brought her back. The worst part wasn't the funeral. It was what came after. The empty house. The toothbrush she never put back. The coffee mug that still had her lipstick stain. The voicemail he kept replaying at night just to hear her voice again. Marcus tried to stay strong for Jordan. Tried to cook, tried to smile. But there were nights he sat in the dark with a bottle in his hand, asking God why. People said things would get easier. But how do you move on from the one person who made you feel seen in a world that didn't? Nia wasn't just his wife. She was his peace. The one who smoothed his tie before job interviews. who talked him down after his boss made those subtle racist digs masked as just jokes. She had fire, grace. She protected their son like a lioness. And just like that, she was gone. The accident had happened so fast. Or at least that's what they were told. A fire, a crash, no open casket, only ashes. He never got to say goodbye. Jordan had cried for days, then stopped completely. He drew pictures of her, said he dreamed of her cooking breakfast. Sometimes he'd sit at the window waiting. Just in case she comes back, Dad. Marcus wanted to scream every time he heard that, but he'd smile and nod. Maybe, buddy, maybe. In truth, he didn't believe in miracles. Not anymore. He went back to work a few weeks after the funeral. Same office, same cold stares. One white coworker said, "You're back already? That was fast, like losing your black wife came with an expiration date." Grief wasn't just pain, it was isolation. Nobody asked how he was doing after the second week. People stopped calling. Meals stopped arriving. The world moved on, but he couldn't. There were too many memories stitched into the walls of their home. Her laughter, her music, the way she used to dance with Jordan in the living room, barefoot and free. Every hallway echoed her name. He kept a photo of her on the nightstand. Jordan had one in his backpack. And even when he tried, even when he forced himself to live like she'd want him to, something always pulled him back to that moment. That grave, that rain, that hole in the earth that swallowed his world. Now, sitting in that diner, staring at a woman who looked just like Nia, he felt everything come rushing back. The pain, the hope, the fear that maybe, just maybe, they'd been wrong all along. Barefoot and free. Every hallway echoed her name. He kept a photo of her on the nightstand. Jordan had one in his backpack. And even when he tried, even when he forced himself to live like she'd want him to, something always pulled him back to that moment. That grave, that rain, that hole in the earth that swallowed his world. Now, sitting in that diner, staring at a woman who looked just like Nia, he felt everything come rushing back. The pain, the hope, the fear that maybe, just maybe, they'd been wrong all along. Marcus couldn't stop staring. The more he looked at her, the more impossible it felt to deny it. She wasn't just similar, she was her. The birthmark, the scent, the way she moved her hands when she spoke to a customer. It was all there. But why would she be working in a diner 3 towns away, living like a stranger? After she left their table, Marcus told Jordan to sit tight. "Don't move. I'll be right back." The boy nodded, eyes wide, his fingers clutching his backpack. Marcus stood up, legs shaking like he'd been standing too long on thin ice. He walked to the register slowly, pretending to read the dessert board. She stood only a few feet away now, pouring a drink behind the counter, focused. He stepped closer. "Excuse me." She looked up. Her eyes met his. Nothing. No shock, no smile, no recognition. "Do you know someone named Nia?" he asked, voice barely steady. She blinked. "Sorry?" "Nia. Nia Walker. My wife." Her expression didn't change. "I don't think so." She grabbed a refill pitcher and walked off toward another table. Marcus just stood there, his throat dry. He knew when someone was lying, and she had just lied to his face. He walked back to the booth, heart pounding. Jordan looked up at him, confused. "Was it her?" Marcus didn't answer. "We're leaving." They got in the car. The silence was thick. He drove down the highway, but he couldn't focus on the road. Every 5 seconds, her face came back, her voice, the way she didn't flinch when he said Nia's name. She wasn't scared. She was hiding. He pulled over near a gas station and took a deep breath. There's no way that woman is just a look-alike, and no way she didn't feel it too. He looked at Jordan in the rearview mirror. "I need to go back. I need to know." They turned around. By the time they reached the diner again, the sky was darker. Only a few cars were left in the lot. He parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes passed. Then the back door of the diner swung open. The waitress walked out, now wearing a coat, hair untied. She looked tired, human, real. Marcus stepped out of the car slowly and followed from a distance. She walked 2 blocks, then turned into a narrow alley behind a closed pharmacy. "Excuse me," he called softly. "Nia?" She froze mid-step. His voice cracked. "Please." She didn't turn, just stood there. He stepped closer. "It's me, Marcus. I'm not crazy. I know it's you." She finally turned around, slowly. Her eyes met his. And for a moment, he saw it. The pain, the history, the flood of emotion hiding under the surface. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Then she turned, fast, and ran. Marcus stood there, stunned. She disappeared into the shadows. He didn't chase her. He couldn't. His feet felt like they were buried in concrete. Why would she run from him? If she was alive, why hide? Why lie? Back in the car, Jordan whispered from the back seat, "She ran away?" Marcus stared out the windshield. "Yeah." "Why would Mom run away from us?" He didn't answer. Because he didn't know. Everything he thought he understood about grief, about closure, about death just cracked in half. If Nia was alive, then someone lied. Someone made her disappear. And Marcus was going to find out who. Marcus didn't sleep that night. So he sat in the living room, staring at his wedding photo. Her eyes, that same stare from the alley. The one that saw him, but refused to say anything. He ran through every memory in his head, looking for cracks. Had she planned this? Was she protecting something? Was it even her decision? By morning, he wasn't tired, just determined. He told Jordan he had an errand and dropped him at his sister's place. Then he drove straight back to that alley, parked near the diner, and waited. This time he wasn't walking away without answers. Hours passed. The lunch crowd came and went. Finally, he saw her through the diner window, pouring coffee, nodding politely. He didn't go in. He followed her again after her shift. But instead of confronting her in public, he waited until she reached her apartment building. A quiet brownstone on a side street. He got out of the car and called her name, Nia. She froze again. But this time, she didn't run. She turned around slowly. Her hands shook as she unlocked the front door. "You can come in, but you need to keep your voice down." The apartment was small but clean. A couch, a stack of books, a candle still burning in the corner. He stood in the doorway, heart racing. "I buried you." She sat down, eyes full of something he hadn't seen in years. Not fear, guilt. "You buried an urn," she said quietly. "Not me." He couldn't breathe. "You faked your death?" She nodded. "It was the only way." Marcus took a shaky step forward. "You left us. You left your son. You let us believe you were gone." Her voice cracked. "I didn't want to. I had no choice." He clenched his fists. "What choice is there in disappearing from your own family?" She stood now, tears brimming. "They were going to kill me, Marcus, and no one was going to stop them." He stared. "Who?" "A man followed me home from the pharmacy one night. He said things about how I spoke too loud at the city meeting. Said I should have learned my place." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I reported it," she continued. "Filed a police complaint. I even had pictures of him circling the block." He already knew where this was going. "They told me it wasn't serious, that unless he touched me, it wasn't a threat." She paused. A week later, Jordan found a noose hanging from our backyard fence. Marcus sat down hard. "I went to the precinct again. Same officer." He said, "You people always think everything's racist." Tears slid down her face. "That's when I knew I wasn't safe. Not from them, not from the ones paid to protect us." "So you just disappeared?" She nodded. "A friend of mine, an old college roommate, she worked with this underground safe relocation group for women in danger. Mostly abuse cases, but she pulled strings. helped me stage the accident, burned out car, paperwork, even the urn. Marcus stared at her like she was a stranger. You let me bury you. She looked down. If I stayed, they would have come for me, and maybe for Jordan too. He stood now, shaking his head. You don't get to decide what kind of pain your son lives with. He waited at the window every day, drew pictures of you, said you might come back. You let that happen. I watched him, she whispered, from across the street sometimes. I knew where he went to school. I knew he liked soccer now. I didn't stop being his mother. I just couldn't be near him. He didn't know what to say. There was no clean answer, no simple forgiveness. But in her face, beneath the fear, beneath the guilt, was the same woman he loved. The same woman who once stood at the front of a town hall and called out a racist policy in front of 30 angry people. She hadn't run because she was weak. She ran because no one stood with her. Until now. Marcus took a breath. You have to come back. She looked up. Not just to us, he said. To the truth, to the fight. They don't get to erase you like that. And for the first time in years, Nia looked like herself again. Marcus didn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't confusion keeping him up. It was rage. He sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, eyes fixed on the police report he'd kept for a year. The one that said, no foul play suspected. He remembered how quick they were to call it an accident, how fast they pushed for cremation, how no one questioned the missing details. Now he knew why. Someone had decided Nia's life didn't matter, and no one fought that decision. He would. By morning, Marcus was at the local precinct, the same place that had dismissed Nia's reports, the same officer still behind the desk. He walked straight to the window. I need to speak to internal affairs. The officer didn't look up. About what? Marcus placed a photo of Nia on the counter. The man finally glanced up and went pale. I said, I need internal affairs. Now. Within an hour, he was in a gray-walled room with a detective who barely hid his annoyance. You're saying your wife is alive after a confirmed fatal crash? I'm saying, Marcus said, calm but shaking, you never confirmed anything. You cremated an unknown body based on assumption. You ignored her reports, and now I know why. The detective leaned forward. You accusing us of something? I'm accusing you of not caring when a black woman said she feared for her life. He dropped another folder on the table. Copies of the threats Nia received, the complaint logs and the timeline of the so-called accident. She reported him 3 times. The same man, the same car. You logged it and did nothing. The detective glanced at the papers. You know how many cases we handle? No, Marcus cut him off. I know how many you ignore. Later that day, Marcus sat down with a local black-owned paper, then a regional podcast, then a community activist who'd been tracking similar police negligence cases. The story spread fast. Widowed black father finds dead wife alive, says police ignored threats. Talk shows picked it up. Hashtags started to circulate. She tried to report it. Some people were sympathetic. Others accused him of faking the whole thing for attention. But Marcus didn't care anymore. He'd been silent long enough. Then the big break came. A former officer from another precinct reached out anonymously, said he'd heard about the case, sent Marcus an internal memo, years old, mentioning the same man who'd stalked Nia, a man with confirmed ties to a white supremacist group, a man who'd later volunteered for local sheriff campaign events. He printed everything, highlighted names, circled timestamps, brought it all to a civil rights attorney. Within 72 hours, they filed an official civil lawsuit against the department. Failure to protect, gross negligence, civil conspiracy. It made headlines. The town's mayor issued a public statement claiming he had no idea about any of this. The same night, someone spray-painted Nia's apartment door. Liar. That was the moment Marcus knew they were scared. The system didn't fear truth. It feared exposure. The next morning, he walked into the courtroom lobby with Nia by his side. Cameras flashed. Journalists shouted questions. But Nia kept walking, shoulders back, chin high. Inside, a few officers tried not to look at her. But she saw them. The same ones who used to ignore her in the waiting room. And now they couldn't look away. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back row. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but everyone wanted to witness what was about to unfold. A black woman once declared dead, now suing the very system that buried her story. Nia sat at the plaintiff's table, dressed in navy, hair tied back, hands folded tightly in her lap. Marcus sat beside her, jaw clenched. He could feel the weight in the air. This wasn't just about them anymore. This was about every ignored report, every brushed-off complaint, every time someone said, "We'll look into it," and never did. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The trial began. The defense tried to paint it as a misunderstanding. They said the threats weren't credible, that she overreacted, that her choice to disappear had nothing to do with police negligence. But Nia's lawyer was prepared. They showed the dated complaints, the photos, the memo that proved the man threatening her had a documented history with hate groups. And then came the witnesses. First, the college friend who helped her escape. Then a former neighbor who remembered the noose in their backyard and how the police dismissed it as a Halloween prank. The courtroom grew colder with every word. But the moment that changed everything was when Jordan took the stand. He climbed up slowly, legs swinging from the chair. He looked nervous, but he held his chin up. The attorney asked gently, "Do you remember the day your mom went away?" Jordan nodded. "They said she died in a car crash. I drew her a goodbye card. I didn't even get to give it to her." Someone in the gallery sniffled. "And what happened the other day? At the diner?" Jordan looked at the jury. "I saw her. I knew it was her. I said, 'Dad, that waitress looks just like Mom.' And he turned and just froze." The room went quiet. He added softly, "She didn't leave us because she wanted to. She left because she was scared." Silence. Even the defense attorney looked down. Nia wiped her eyes. Marcus felt something shift. Not just in the room, in the entire narrative. This wasn't about procedure anymore. It was about a boy who lost his mother not to an accident, but to silence. The final blow came when the anonymous former officer was called. He testified under protection. He confirmed that there was pressure in the department to keep certain complaints off the record, especially when they involved racial narratives. He read from a message he received. "Let the fire do the cleanup. Less paperwork." Gasps, audible ones. The jury looked shaken. One woman covered her mouth. Another took off her glasses and wiped her eyes. Marcus looked over at the defense table. The lead officer who had dismissed Nia's reports was sweating now. He wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Closing arguments came. Nia's lawyer stood tall. "You don't have to believe this system is evil to admit it failed. You don't have to call them monsters to know they were negligent. But what you can't do, what you must not do, is walk out of this courtroom pretending this never happened." He looked at the jury. She was hunted. She cried for help. She was ignored. And then she was erased. Until she decided to come back. The jury went into deliberation. It didn't take long. When they returned, everyone stood. The foreperson's voice was steady. "We find the police department guilty of gross negligence and systemic failure to protect." A pause. "And we find the lead officer liable for contributing to the circumstances that led to the plaintiff's disappearance and trauma." A murmur filled the room. The officer hung his head. Nia closed her eyes. Marcus reached over and held her hand. Jordan smiled for the first time in days. Reporters rushed out of the room. People in the gallery whispered things like, "Finally," and "It's about time." And for once, the system didn't swallow the truth. It had to speak it out loud. In front of everyone. The diner hadn't changed. Same creaky door, same old jukebox playing low in the corner. Same scent of burnt toast and too strong coffee. But something was different now. This time they walked in together. Marcus, Nia, and Jordan. People turned to look, not out of shock, but because they recognized something rare, a family that had been broken, walking in whole again. They took the same booth as before, the one where it all started. No words at first, just quiet glances, small smiles, a few deep breaths. Nia reached for Jordan's hand across the table. He held it tight. A waitress came by, not the same one, but kind. She poured water, handed out menus, and said nothing more than, "Take your time." Marcus looked at Nia. Her face was calm now, not tense, not hiding. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I think, for the first time in a long time." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a folded drawing. Jordan's card, the one he had made the day they thought she died. It was crumpled at the edges, faded in color, but still whole. Nia took it with shaking hands, opened it slowly. Inside, a stick figure version of her smiling, holding hands with Jordan. Underneath, in a child's handwriting, "You're always with me, Mom." Tears welled in her eyes. She looked at Jordan. "Even when you thought I was gone, you still believed in me?" Jordan shrugged, small smile on his lips. "I just knew you weren't really gone. Not for real." Nia leaned across the table and kissed his forehead. Outside the window, the sky was starting to clear. No rain today. Just sunlight trying to break through. Marcus looked around the diner. There were still cracks in the floor, paint peeling near the corner booth. Same old walls. But here at this table, something felt rebuilt. Not perfect, but real, complete. The kind of peace that doesn't come with noise or celebration. Just stillness. Jordan reached for his pancake. Nia laughed quietly as syrup spilled down his wrist. Marcus sipped his coffee and breathed in deep. For the first time since the funeral, the world didn't feel heavy. It felt possible. Like maybe everything that broke could one day become something stronger. They didn't talk about the court case, or the officer who lost his badge, or the reporters still calling. That would come later. Right now, they were just a family, sitting at a table, together. And for Marcus, that was more justice than any courtroom could ever deliver. He looked at Nia. She smiled back. And in that moment, without needing to say it, they both knew. They had survived something the world never expected them to walk through. And they didn't just survive it, they came back, together.